my company and most of the companies we compete with can obtain all of those tools. So really it's going to come down to just who you want to work with. And at the end of the day, customers are going to have a choice of who they want to work with and who aligns with them best. And that's what we try to do. We try to sell through storytelling and just giving you as much background on us as possible so that you feel comfortable making that decision if you want to partner with.
Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Business Ninjas. I'm here today with Tim Pabich. He's the CEO and founder at Magnitech. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited to have you. So, Tim, why don't you start? Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I've been doing this professionally for a little over 20 years now. Been in IT. Took interest, growing up in the Chicago suburbs. I guess I'll go personal first. My dad was a school teacher. My mom still works for Aon Corporation, which is a large insurance brokerage. Neither of them. My dad was the first one to go through college. My mom didn't go to college, so she started working there right after she graduated high school. She's been there ever since. And so, they worked really hard to provide a nice life for my sister and I I wanted to do the same for my kids. And, my mom always used to say that, our generation would be the first one that had it harder than the previous, just because of just how expensive things ended up getting. And, you needed two incomes and things like that. So, but we were fortunate enough as kids growing up to be taken on, some nice family vacations. My parents would save up for those kinds of things. And so I wanted to provide the same quality of life. Money was definitely a motivator for me to, be able to, and I'm very competitive. So to be able to get ahead and do all those things, I knew I had to work really hard. So my parents really taught that work ethic, and they were somewhat entrepreneurial as well. Even though they had their jobs, they, put together the baseball program where I grew up and really worked really hard all summer. My mom was the big fundraiser. She'd go around looking for donations, and she would sell candy and do all the other stuff. And my dad was the face guy, the president, the politician, but he worked on the fields all the time. He was always busting his butt, and he lived right across the street from the fields. And so I saw how hard they worked, and I think it just became contagious for me. I just, as much as they would preach hard work, they wanted me mostly to apply myself. I wasn't the straight A student like my sister was. I was a little more of a free spirit, but when I applied myself, I did really well. And it usually gravitated more towards interests. So if it was something I was really into, I went really, really hard at it, 150%, just like starting my own company. Once I knew that I was going to do that, I went really, really hard at that. Things that were less interesting, not so much. I really didn't show much interest. I probably have that same behavior here at work. I bet you my colleagues would tell me tell you the exact same thing. If I'm big on it, I go hard at it. Mm-hmm. If it's something that I don't really care much about, you could tell I won't. I'm too nice to sometimes reject it directly. But what I will do is sort of not show interest, and then they know at that point, okay, we're not going to really follow up. We're just going to move this direction. So. I grew up, had a nice childhood, but I grew up, as a teenager, working all kinds of jobs, went to DePaul University for computer science. Now, I was graduating high school, and I graduated high school in 1998, so that's how old I am. But I got into college right around the Y2K timeframe, and all the rage was, programming and, getting ready for the Y2K switch and COBOL and all this other stuff. I took a lot of those classes, but they became quickly obsolete. Back then, the curriculum at the university level, depending on where you went, didn't always have all of the labs and the hands-on. I think the college curriculum for computer science is much better today than it was when I was going to school, where it was a lot more classroom and theory and stuff that I'm absolutely not interested in. But I did take interest into gaming and, playing like first person shooter games and stuff like that. Some of the old timers, guys in their 40s and 50s will probably remember Quake and some of those old games. And that's what I used to play. And I got to dabble a little bit in server administration when I was doing that. So I was tasked with making sure one of our servers was always online and stuff like that, because we would host games for other people all around the internet. So from that point, I learned some commands and things like that. And that's how I got really an interest in computer science. But I didn't really like the program. That was one thing that I just really wasn't excited about. But I did like the thrill of keeping networks online, being challenged with those types of responsibilities. And that's the direction and the path I took in school. So once I got out of school, then I started working for Aon Corporation. My mom helped me get a job there, and I was working on their help desk, resetting passwords, doing some basic things. Was often dismayed if I got passed up for a promotion because I thought I interviewed well and I thought I showed up well, and I wore my heart on my sleeve, so nobody ever really had to question where my loyalties were or what I was. You knew if I was interested or not. And when I was interested, I was going to give you everything I had, and but you don't always win. You don't always get the deal, and it's the same thing with clients. We go in hard on it and don't always win. It's just the way it goes. But once I started kind of getting passed over for positions, I would move on and I would end up at another job where, I would learn a lot more. I had a very big appetite for learning knowledge and getting information because I wanted to be competent. I wanted to enter into a conversation with some credibility, and I wanted to be able to tell people I was a lot better than I was. But I had really no experience. And so finally, I found a company that was willing to give me some experience and put me out there and give me a chance. And kind of grew my way to a point where I really couldn't get any further. And so I knew, it was either work for a large company where there was a lot of structure and a huge ladder and an opportunity to just keep moving up, or do I do what I want to do? Because I struggled with this thing called authority. Like if it didn't make sense to me, I didn't want to do it. And I was very highly, very opinionated. I had an idea of how I thought things should be done. And when I made up my mind, I was very aggressive about it. And it didn't always jive with everybody else. So, it came to the point where it's like, hey, either, and I think, I spent the next 8 years, I would say, from when I graduated working for all these other people. And then a lot of things changed for me. We got married. I got married to my wife. I had my first child. She's now 13, and I remember looking at her in the cradle, thinking as a newborn, as a 2-month-old, like, are you going to be proud of me? What kind of legacy am I going to build for you? And I felt like I was in a little bit of a rut. I was on a treadmill, if you will, financially. Like I felt like I had hit the high point of what this job could pay me. And I knew that if I had to get better, something had to happen. Either I had to go back to school and develop more skills, or it's now or never, and I'm going to start my own company and build a managed services provider, which is basically a subscription where businesses will pay my company a monthly fee for us to do everything from a technology standpoint on there, for their business. We just don't do any coding or programming. That would be a separate competency that our company doesn't have. But we are strictly networking, managed services, and cybersecurity defense. That's what we do. And so, a lot of companies were doing break fix type model where you would kind of wait by the phone, and a company would call in and they would say, hey, I need some tech support on X, Y, and Z, and then we would develop a relationship where it was more break fix. There might be some routine maintenance stuff here and there just to kind of keep cash flow moving, but for the most part, it was break fix. So I developed Magnitech as a managed service provider from the very beginning, and I think that gave us a competitive edge over companies that had been around 10, 15 years longer than us. So anyway, so that's how I started. I think I had a lot of issues with some autonomy. I wanted to have autonomy, and I didn't always get it. And so I think I was a beast that really couldn't be tamed. I had to develop it my way, and I think that's how a lot of businesses form, right? Unless you're just a brilliant mind that has a widget or has something that they want to sell, right? But when you're a service business, it's you're going to compete sometimes against people who may have their way of doing things, and you may decide, well, I think it should be done like this. So With that, it's taking that leap of faith with a 2-month-old, and that's what I did.
That's fantastic. It sounds like you've had a really interesting journey getting you to Magnitech, being, the CEO and founder. You started to talk to me a little bit of kind of about what Magnitech does. Tell me a little bit more.
Yeah, so exactly that. So a company may have an IT guy on staff, or they may use like the smartest guy in the office to like fix common computer problems, like I can't print, or I can't log in, or help me set up my email, or help me set up email on my phone. The internet doesn't work, so someone's going to go in there rebooting routers. You know, Rather than have that happen, why don't we have a budget to do things right in the first place, and try to reduce the noise. There's nothing worse than coming back from like a 3-day weekend or coming back from vacation and nothing works.
Mhm.
So to have the, let's say a 20-30 person team managing your network, as opposed to one guy who may not show up that day. He may call in sick or might be hungover from the 4th of July, something like that, and they're not going to come to work. What do you do, right? So to be able to have an enterprise quality service team, and that kind of scale for the cost or less than that one person you were paying them, it's a no-brainer. But from that standpoint, from a financial standpoint and a value standpoint, it's a no-brainer. But a lot of businesses, have their own way of doing things, and they may or may not be interested in relinquishing some sort of control, especially over their IT systems. So there's a little bit of trust involved there, and it's a relationship type business. We still have to develop a relationship with the people we're working with.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, there are a lot of other businesses out there that do, IT services that are in the same kind of space as Magnitech.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about how you're really able to differentiate yourself.
Well, I've said this many times in the past. The tools that we have access to, that we acquire from our channel partners, to bundle that into a service, like whether it's backup or it's spam filtering, or it's just our common monitoring tool that allows us to see when networks are up and down, and spitting out errors or running clean. Look, my company and most of the companies we compete with can obtain all of those tools. No big deal, right? So really, it's going to come down to just who you want to work with. What kind of company am I working with? What kind of values do they have? What do their people believe in? Are they responsive? Are they friendly? Are they competent? All of those other things. I'm not going to sit here and sell you on like the backup technology, because it's relatively common. But what we can do is tell you about our culture. We can give you the why factor. We can tell you exactly why we do this, what we believe in, and at the end of the day, customers are going to have a choice of who they want to work with, and who aligns with them best. And that's what we try to do. We try to sell through storytelling and just giving you as much background on us as possible, so that you feel comfortable making that decision of who you want to partner with.
And when you're talking about that culture, talk to me a little bit more about that.
Right. So I built the company in a way in which I wanted to be managed. I did not like to be micromanaged. Oftentimes, I respected authority, but it was hard for disagreements to not get personal, and it wasn't even on my side; it was on their side. So I was often very careful about how much I shared. I tried to keep it to myself, but I was often labeled as like a hothead, and not a hothead, but that's maybe more of like a gunslinger in terms of saying too much, and saying things I shouldn't. But I spoke the truth the best I could, and that came across maybe as arrogant or cocky for a guy in his 20s. But I just had an idea of how I thought things should be run, and so I built the company with respect, and with pillars, of different values of things that I believe in and things I've learned along the way. A lot of those values are based on mistakes I've made. So we hire here for culture. We really do. It's whether or not, competency is very important. We want to make sure that you know the trade.
Mhm.
I often went into it with the mindset that I can teach those qualities. I can teach the trades. I can help you become a better IT professional.
Mhm.
But it's very, very difficult for me to rehab a bad attitude.
Mhm.
It's got to be there. I got to see it. And, we're also very careful in our hiring practices of, you know, we survey our candidates with a culture index survey, which, if you've ever taken any of those, like Myers-Briggs or DISC or, it's like that, because we want to make sure we're also putting the right people on the right seats on the bus,
Mhm.
which I think is important, because I feel like I found some of my best people in different roles, whether it's it could be as an account, they could be an account executive, or they can be a service coordinator, or my COO, or a marketing manager. They all applied to the account manager job at my company.
Mhm.
So there was something about that post that they liked, but it didn't. It got to the point where they admitted later we were just applying to whatever was open because we knew we had to work there. We
Yeah.
wanted to work there.
Wow.
So we use our social media to spell that out as well. So we use our SEO efforts and other generating methods to try to get and attract customers, but we put our social media stuff out there to try to attract prospective colleagues.
Mhm.
Um, it's a sales job not only for customers but for talent, and
Yeah.
so I've realized that, and I feel like that is something we do really well. So we showcase it quite a
That's
bit.
really interesting. That's so fascinating that, so many of your leadership positions came from, like you said, an account executive. It just goes to show kind of the power that social media has, the power of your presence online.
Yeah, that's right. And to directly even answer your question, I built the company in a way that was conducive to how I wanted to work.
Mhm.
You know, I think, but over time, you have to go from a startup to more of a structured environment. So, it got to the point where I realized, hey, I want to just be a guy sitting here who owns the company and then just have like a whole bunch of technicians,
Mhm.
and then I'm doing all the billing and I'm doing all the HR, and I'm handling all the escalations, and it just became too much, right? The you start a business for certain things that you see on the outside. Things
Mhm.
that I didn't quite understand when I started the company was, the stress involved in making payroll. Having one of your largest customers possibly, upset with you,
Mhm.
having maybe a few of your best talented colleagues upset with you. There's a lot of other factors that
Mhm.
play in to having a business that I really never considered in the beginning.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know, I wanted to make money. I wanted to have freedom. Okay, those are great benefits, but there's a lot of everything's balanced. I really believe based on your job role, there's a huge balance. Yes, I'm paid the highest in the company. I was here first. That's the way it goes. But and yes, I have certain freedoms. Like if I decide I want to go golfing during the day, I can do that, right? But I'm also responsible if the place burns down. Like I have to make sure that doesn't happen.
Mhm.
And so the only way that I knew, you know, that I could accomplish some of those goals was to scale. And so, you know, it was developing and deciding at one point, hey, look, I have enough money to hire people, but guess what? I'm not gonna, and we need more IT help, but I can't do that right now. Like I have to hire somebody to do the books because the billing got really complicated and became very transactional, and we started selling a lot of computers and firewalls and switches, and all this product and hardware started kind of going out. And so we were invoicing on a daily basis. So we got to the point where I had to hire somebody in that position. Well, that was a trust issue for me, right? Because I now, like, someone had the ability to see just about everything that was going on, from a financial standpoint. And so with that, I had to be careful that I can bring somebody in I can trust. So over time, we started to grow, and we started to add people in key roles like HR, like finance, marketing, sales, operations. And those people come with a hefty price tag. Even account management, right? Making sure that we're taking care of our customers from a customer service standpoint, scheduling technology business reviews on a monthly basis for them so that we can stay top of mind on certain things. The tech team probably didn't quite understand at the time, like, wow, he's got all this money to spend, but we're not getting the kind of raises we want. We're not getting extra help and stuff like that. And they had to understand things that I didn't understand when I was just an employee was, hey, the organization has to provide support as well to you. I'm not available enough to support you because I'm one guy and there's a whole bunch of you. So like I need to start putting people in place that can, I need to build this as an ecosystem. It can't just be too heavy on one thing.
Yeah.
So, that those were things that I just didn't really think about at the time before I started the company was all of these extra headaches and stuff like that. But
I think that's part of growing and scaling too, is going, from a startup, like you said, this was a new venture for you. Like you built this company the way that you would want to work in a company, and,
yeah,
growing and scaling, I imagine too, like there were some tough times in that growth, learning along the way and, figuring it out. But, you've obviously been successful. Magnitech has, seen extreme growth over the last few years, and it's certainly something to be proud of.
yeah, yeah, and I, I don't have an explanation for it other than you just got to keep trying to market. You have to keep trying to put your name out there. You have to try to build the brand. That's something that that's something that I focus on very heavily now. I'm not, when I first started the company, I put together all of the tools and developed, I purchased all the tools, put them all together, had everything working as much automated as possible because I knew as a one-man shop, I didn't have the time to sit here and manually do all these things. So I had to set up that automation to give me a little bit of breathing room to try to grow and try to sell and try to add on and things like that. So, I think once I was able to get a little bit of traction, I could start to develop more dollars and put more money into the marketing efforts to try to get more leads and more opportunity. One thing that we did notice was the leads tend to come in bunches, and I'm not really sure what happens. It's almost like the the stars all align a certain way, and then everyone needs IT help at the same time. So you'll end up getting like two or three leads at one time that you're trying to work through, which is exciting, but it puts a stress on it puts a strain on everybody. So I knew that we had to really work hard to develop processes, procedures, documentation, all of those things. We couldn't work any faster, so we had to get more efficient. And so, that was another reason why we hired certain people in non-technical roles that knew how to do those things. So now I can say, hey, um, I think we should, I think we should get better at this, this, and this. We got to start thinking about this. And now I could see like the COO is, his heads, his wheels are turning because he's starting to think about how to implement it. And so I think, the company has to get to a certain point where it's like, okay, I can only take this so far as is because I'm only one guy and I can only go so much at this. And like, I have to start now thinking about who I could help, who I could bring in to help me implement.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's a critical piece that I think a lot of people they don't know how to get unstuck. And I think that has to do with the fact that they have to look. They can either keep it the way they want to keep it, and that's fine if it's a lifestyle business and this is just where you want it to be, and you can work really really hard for the rest of your life, or you can decide, hey, look, I'm going to work really really hard right now while I can, and maybe get to a point where I can start to enjoy it later. And that's accepting that you have to scale at
yeah.
that
And
point.
I think, there's a point in businesses where you hit that cusp of like, okay, like just like you said, you can either be content working, for the rest of your life the way it is, or you can say, all right, I'm ready to scale, and then, take a step back and put people in charge that you trust to be able to help continue to grow, I hate to call it your baby, but help grow your baby, grow your company.
Right. That's right. And so they have to believe in what I believe in. And so that's where those values come in, and that's the storytelling, and that's the being a good influencer within the organization. That's what you have to be as an influencer. Like I have to be there and walk around and you know give them a little fist bump at their desk and not even say a word. Just walk around and do that like while they're working. They might be on calls and stuff, but it's just acknowledging that I appreciate them and that the stuff they do is important, and they could probably work for anywhere for anyone really, but we pride ourselves as being elite and having the best people, and so why would you want to go anywhere else? So it's just getting them to believe in our message and what we stand for, and they in many respects also can't see themselves working anywhere else.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's fantastic. Well, Tim, this has been a great conversation. As we start to wrap up, is there anything that you want to leave our listeners with, either about Magnitech, about the industry, anything you want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, Magnitech specializes in small and mid-sized companies. So if you're, an organization that has, let's say, 20 employees, and our sweet spot's probably anywhere from 20 employees to like 150 employees. But yet we service clients that have several more endpoints than that. But it just seems like the most common range is in there. If you're looking for someone who knows how to support your organization and keep you safe and not get hacked and provide reliable support, then that's what we do for you. So I would encourage you to reach out and let us take a look at your network.
I think that's fantastic. A great little bit to leave our listeners with. Well, Tim, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate your insights into scaling businesses, the little key, tips that you gave just to help boost morale, encourage a positive company culture. I think this was a great conversation. I really appreciate you being on Business Ninjas today.
All right, Kelsey, thank you.